afternoon, everyone. Onegaishimasu. I hope everyone's very well. Nice to see you all. Excuse me. So, this morning, we are on number 9 of Toi Sensei's rules for instructors. Let me begin by reading this for you. Do not lose your temper. You must know that it is a shame for an Aikido person to lose their temper, because it means that they've lost their one point. Particularly, don't lose your temper on something personal. However, if you must get angry for the sake of the universe or for the sake of your country, do it with your whole being by concentrating your ki in your one point. You must know that a person who loses temper easily may become cowardly in a serious situation. So maybe first we should define temper. In steel, for instance, in metallurgy, they refer to the temper of the steel as being either very hard or very flexible. And this is similar to us with human beings. When we refer to the temper, we're referring generally to your balance, sense of balance, your state of mind. And when you lose your temper, then of course it means you're losing your balance. However, my concern here, and our concern, needs to be regarding instructing as an instructor, specifically in Aikido. Tori Sensei says, you can't, you must not lose your temper, you must not, in defense of yourself, of something personal, but only in defense of something great. And I would say in defense of anyone other than yourself, but most particularly the teaching of Aikido, since you are a representative of that teaching. There's some distinctions that are really important, though, for this. One of them is that when a student insults the teaching in front of the teacher, he or she can expect the teacher to respond with a very high level of intensity, significantly. Because the teacher's responsibility is to defend the teaching from all ignorance. So when the teacher, speaks strongly or with great emotion to the student, it must never be because you're angry at the student, but instead because you're angry at the ignorance. The enemy is never the student. The enemy in Aikido is only ignorance. So if the student is being particularly stubborn, and I've seen Toi Sensei and Suzuki Sensei do this many, many times, then at that point, after many other things have been tried, there may be the need to shock the student out of their state of ignorance, at least temporarily, to help them understand whatever the teaching is that's going forward. So I think in the case of representing the teaching, there are times when it may be necessary to use that as a tactic. But we must never lose our one point. Losing our one point means taking it personally. When you get your own person involved, if there's conflict ever residing between the teacher and the students in the dojo, then that teacher has lost his or her ability to lead the group. We cannot afford to allow any personal negative feelings to exist between ourselves and our students. Think about that. I'm really saying none whatsoever. So it pays to listen to what you say and what you think when you're sitting quietly by yourself, contemplating your students. You can always go through them and look at each one and send them a powerful, supportive, loving key. And that's a great check, just to see what state you're in relation to your students. And then when it comes up in the dojo, and it might be too late for such an examination, you're prepared, and you know that you'll only speak and act in loving support of the student, never against the student. I think this is a general principle for living, of course, but maybe importantly for Aikido. I think I mentioned this there, people often call Aikido self-defense. And this is a complete misunderstanding of the Aikido that I understand, and that I think Toi Sensei was teaching and Suzuki Sensei was teaching. So because when we're attacked by someone, we're not trying to defend ourselves against this person from this person, hurting us emotionally or physically even, right? Because if we do that, then there's a conflict. There's one against another, and that's not Aikido. No, when someone comes at us, whether it's verbally and emotionally or physically, if there is a defense, it's helping that other person defend against the ignorance, defend against their own weakness that's causing them to possibly harm emotionally or physically someone else. The fact that it's you that they're attacking, it doesn't matter. It's just as if they're attacking someone else. And you defend against the weakness, not against the person. So this distinction is really critical for our understanding in Aikido, because it leads to all aspects of interrelationship in the dojo. Okay, just a reminder, again, for the second time this year, where our new program is starting now. So that means at 7:30, Len Curtis Sensei, who's my co-host, will put everyone in rooms together, separate rooms, breakout rooms, and you can discuss this subject and see what you come up with. And then after 10 minutes, we'll close the rooms and you'll return. And you can ask me a question about it or make comments. Okay, let's begin with some key breathing. All right, so I think everyone has returned. Let's begin with room number 1.
Good morning, Sensei.
Good morning.
I had the pleasure to be in room 1 with Gloria, Sally, and David, senseis. I think we all agree we don't see it often in the dojo of our instructors in the Aikido dojo. They're models of keeping one point. I don't think we've experienced that too much. Um, I personally was relating what you were saying to the classroom as a teacher. So I've often heard new teachers say, "Oh, uh, period 4 is coming up. Oh, that's my rotten class," and and it colors their feelings and approach to that period, their whole demeanor, even talking about it over lunch. They say, "Oh no," and I've long since learned not to do that, and I think because, in large part, because of Aikido practice. Otherwise, it's going to color my influence for everybody. But because I'll see the kids repeatedly throughout the week, throughout the year, and I don't want them to think negatively of me, because I see that of the kids. They see it in reverse, and Gloria brought this up. What we give out is often what we get back. So they feel that. So I've heard kids say that about a certain teacher, right? Oh no, it's period 4, and I don't want that to be said about me. It returns, and then David said it's the mirror, the universal mirror. So we were all putting it in the pot that way. But I think it's also like the cut of a bokken. There is a certain intensity when you feel something, but it's gone after that. It cuts. You're upset at something. You boom. But I try to make it a point to talk to the student after and explain this is why. Do you understand? And then we come to a fist bump and say, let's start it fresh tomorrow. How's that? So when they see me right after class in passing, they don't relate a negative sense to me, but every moment is teaching, every moment is practice. So that's how I took it. But that's what we kind of shared as a teacher and as a parent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really great, Rene. Thank you. I know that you were once, not too long ago, awarded Teacher of the Year, and they even gave you a car, which I thought was interesting gift.
It was leased for a year, but I did buy it after.
Well, I know that means you understand this very well, or that never would have happened for you. So thank you very much. That's just wonderful to hear. Thank you. Let's go on to the next room, please.
Yeah, hello, Sensei.
Hello. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. We were in room 2 I was there with Prakash, Bernd, Sensei, and Luz. I don't know how to pronounce. We had different angles on this discussion, basically discussed from various angles. I started out by telling about examples where I, as a teacher in the dojo, could, after a couple of years, no longer support one student and had to ask him to leave because of overstepping borders for other students and endangering the safe atmosphere in the dojo. So, and that was a challenge for me, not having a personal reaction, one point coming up all the time. So staying calm and how to manage that. And then Prakash Sensei told the story that you have told before about Suzuki Sensei keeping this one annoying student in the dojo. Everybody hated her, but she had to stay because Sensei said so. It's the best students you have. So there's kind of, the question is, where is the border? How long can you keep that? And when is the point where you actually have to defend others in this instant, other students?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's actually, this is happened to me, or I finally had to ask a student to leave also, but it didn't. The student overstepped their bounds for years in the dojo, and I really felt very much like Suzuki Sensei felt that there was a value there for everyone. It's a constant negative object lesson, and everybody could see it. And it really, I think, sharpened everybody a bit. But at some point, he lost it so badly that he had to leave. And on the other end, in other situations, in another situation, I've had a student that I never had to tell to leave, but at some point he became so, it became so obvious to him that he was blowing it, that he just left on his own. And this is after 30 years of training. So it's not like just some silly new student doesn't really get it. These are people often that have trained for many, many years, but have one little misunderstanding that becomes so large by feeding it over the years that it overtakes them and causes them to lose it completely. So that's really losing your temper. You know. So yeah, the story about Suzuki Sensei and that woman, it's in my book. I thought it was so important that I put it there because it's so anti-logical. It's and non-intuitive. You wouldn't think that would be the thing to do, but it was perfect for me. You know, it transformed my life just because he did that. And I don't think he had me particularly in mind, but I was the one that was suffering the most. Maybe, I certainly from my own selfish point of view, I thought that was true, but I was the one that benefited the most. It was spectacular, actually. So, I'm sorry, excuse me. Thank you very much. Nice to see you. Let's go on to the next room.
Good morning.
Hi. Oh, Phoenix, excuse me. You go ahead.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning Hawaii time. This is Phoenix. I was very lucky to be in a group with Charlotte, with Aiko, and with Mele. And each of us talked a bit to start with just about losing our tempers. You know, the experience of it and how it has changed over time. Mele spoke of teaching like junior high students and, you know, losing her temper when she was young in her career, and how that just rarely happens, you know, as she has been practicing, that's just a place she can see that so clearly. She also brought up an interesting point about calling Aikido self-defense classes, and particularly, you know, like advertising them that way, that perhaps there's another way of thinking about that, you know, to describe it to the people that we're inviting, that we're not teaching them to defend themselves, but to work with ourselves. I thought that was very powerful.
That's very important, yeah.
And also, Aiko just, you know, talked about also just that experience of losing, you know, how we lose our tempers frequently, and how, you know, what his experience has been with that, and how things have changed, you know, with the pandemic, how things have been different, et cetera. Charlotte talking, you know, said how much things in her life have changed her way of, you know, the likelihood of her experiencing that kind of losing her temper. You know, she's not working, so she's retired. She has lots of time to practice. She practices at home. She meditates with a group of other people, and just connecting the changes in the way that of living her life and how that affects this. And for me, is just, I think I was very much focusing on it with respect to work, and how, you know, if I feel strongly about something, that temper rises in me, right? I want to fix it, right? But that doesn't work. And so it, just to be able to, I'm often in meetings, just, you know, quiet and watching myself calm. And then when there's something that's essential that needs to come across, it's not an opinion, but a misunderstanding about something or that kind of thing, then I can speak calmly about that. and the other thing that came up, I didn't have a chance to mention it in the meeting, but was with Nalawai Sensei. It wasn't a matter of him being, like angry, but his intensity when he was trying to get something across was just so effective, let's say, because he already always radiated such love, right? But love with the extra intention when he's, demonstrating something for you or whatever. Those will stick with me forever, I think.
Very nice. Thank you. I think that it's important to mention none of us is perfect, of course. And so this happens once in a while for anybody. And in no matter how experienced, I saw Toi Sensei lose his temper. I saw Suzuki Sensei lose his temper. No one is perfect. But the significant thing I noticed, and I was always losing my temper, so it was really nice to see Toi Sensei lose his temper. But the thing I noticed, and I watched carefully because I wanted to understand, is that as soon as it was over, it was gone. This happens. You're a human being. You cannot try to shut yourself down. That's not calmness, to shut yourself off so that you're not feeling anything. Laughter and tears and anger and in passion happens and it's fine. But yes, if you lose your one point, if you lose just from a shock or a surprise or even anger, immediately return. And this exercise we do in the class all the time reflects this. Someone claps behind your head or hits you, and you lose your one point. Maybe you're surprised, but immediately you come back to one point. So that tells a story about the intensity and regularity of your practice. If we're sitting and practicing all the time, then it's much easier to come back to stasis after losing it a little bit. So don't get mad at yourself if you lose your temper, because that's just chasing bad after bad. Okay, thank you very much. Next room, please. Okay, I think it's room.
Hello, Sensei.
Yeah, there you are.
Hello, hi, everybody. Our group was with Johnny and Reina, and Johnny mentioned that how we cannot talk to discipline someone when we are angry. And Reina and I shared how children can sometimes make adults upset. So I shared my story. I was teaching last week third graders, and one boy has been always chatty. He never listened. So I told him to do something, and he told me, "How dare you?" And I've been irritated with this boy, but then at that point, I think I lost it and a little bit. And then I said, for that kind of talk, you are very rude and I can send you to the principal office. And after that, he became very quiet. And I thought of it, you mentioned about discipline, the ignorance of the person, not the person himself. But I wonder, at that, he might not be ignorant. I think he knew how to press my button. And so Johnny say, maybe, children are a little bit different. And I understand that we need to discipline sometimes. But if student or adult, and if they are not ignorant, maybe they may not be ignorant, they may be purposefully, pushing the instructor's button. And does the teaching still apply? That is my question.
Yeah. So I thank you very much. Yeah, I have to. I would say that this is not a lack of ignorance when someone is pushing your buttons. That is a demonstration of ignorance itself. You see, when someone is going against his own best interest, like for instance, this person that I mentioned that was always a problem in the dojo, and finally I had to ask to leave. All the times that he was acting up in the dojo in the way that he did, people said, yeah, but he knows what he's doing. He's just trying to push your buttons. Yes, of course, that's true. But that doesn't mean that he's not ignorant. What is he ignorant of? He's ignorant of the principle of loving kindness, the principle of openness, the principle of listening, which I have to follow as well. Even when I'm scolding someone, I have to be watching and listening very carefully to myself and to the other person to be sure that it's not out of ignorance, but is in support of awakening. Now, I'm not sure that it's different with children. I don't teach children very much. Lynn teaches children a lot, and she tells me about her experience with that. And it always sounds to me, whenever she's talking about the challenges of teaching the children, exactly like the challenges I have with grown-up adults all the way to age 85. You know, in fact, I'm not a psychiatrist, but there's probably something to the idea that when you lose it, you do resort to or return to a kind of childish selfishness. So maybe when you lose it as an adult and you're misbehaving as an adult, you just haven't grown up yet in that way. Just still a child. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next group.
Yes, we're in group 5.
Oh, 5?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure which one ours was. We must be 6.
You are, there's just 5 and 6 left.
So Joel and Roy and Alexi was in our group. And Alexi was kind of new to the term of not focusing on your opponent as opposed to the principle of the opponent's coming at you. And Joel had experienced different tempers where tempers would arise and just lose it, but still calm down. Roy had an experience where you have one student not actually doing the right thing in the dojo and not focusing on that one student. He would observe that the instructor would continue to practice that to the whole group instead of focusing on that one person's deficiency as well. The temper of gathering and noticing your own temper, not to prevent. My question is maybe preventing or being careful not to lose your temper. And then when you're aware of that to a certain point, one of your teachers said to express that loss of temper and then go back to your one point. How do you know, or in the sense of being careful of not losing your temper as opposed to just expressing your temper and then coming back to one point and just being normal.
Yeah. I think there's a general misunderstanding, well, that we all kind of have. So to be fair, we all think we can control ourselves, but we really can't. Or let me put that differently, our attempt to control ourselves always leads to problems. So the whole point is to practice so that we develop ourselves enough that we're free in every moment to allow ourselves to be naturally expressive of our true state. And if we are filled with loving kindness, in other words, if we are truly practicing, we'll never harm anyone. Our natural condition is harm-free. The spirit of non-dissension prevents us from ever doing any harm. So I think that it's a mistake to teach each other or to encourage each other to control ourselves. In fact, I do know that in raising children these days, teaching the child to control him or herself is not the way that's considered appropriate anymore. Now, instead, you talk to the child about the possibilities of harming someone with their words or with their actions, so they can see for themselves, oh, that's not in my best interest to do that. So that's, after all, let's think about maturity. When we become mature, it means we've grown enough to see that negative reactions to people is never in our best interest. It always causes more response, more negative response. So of course, yes, if you're immature and you just let yourself do whatever you want, so, there's going to be a problem, right? So that's not real freedom. I remember when I was 21, I realized, freedom is not freedom to do. True freedom is freedom not to do. But it's not repressing yourself to not do it. It's being free. It's understanding that that is self-destructive behavior. I think this is a really important point, that I hadn't thought of in the beginning of this discussion, but I think what you bring up is very important, this idea of controlling yourself versus being free and open. Something to contemplate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sensei.
Next, last group, Fincher.
Hello, Sensei.
Hello.
I'll make it short. I was in a group with Christoph Sensei, Lynn Sensei, and Bill, myself. And I think our discussion was very much along the lines of what you just said, Sensei, which is, here we have a principle here is a study in itself, right? And so you start out with maybe saying, how can this be? How can this principle really be applied? And Christoph gave us a really good example in something recently encountered, and that was, in brief, if someone behaves in a way that you feel is inappropriate, if you don't correct them or if you don't respond, are you encouraging that bad behavior? So, and then if you do respond, are you like violating the principle? And then we had more discussions, and Bill really gave examples of how every day we do this, right? So every day this is a study of the principle, because and then we discussed very much what you just discussed. If you take the principle and just go out and apply it without really allowing the teaching to soak in without saying, well, how is this possible? I should be doing this. It's more or less a study that Tohei Sensei gives us. Not a principle so much that you go out and apply. Oh, I can't be angry. I can't, I have to, not respond in opposition, these types of things, because it's so hard to understand on that basis. But if we discuss, if we take this principle and wonder about it, it's certainly applied to our life every day. How is this principle done? Not just in the way I initially understand it, but in the way, in the actual essence of this principle. So it was this good juxtaposition between what you were saying, the scale of, oh, I have to go out and apply this to be a good student or a good teacher, as opposed to, wow, what's he really talking about? Can I see this in my day and in my reaction to the day?
Thank you very much. That's a great analysis. Thank you, Fincher. Yeah, I think that it's important to remind ourselves that our practice is to follow the way of the universe. And that's not following rules. The way of the universe cannot be spoken. There are no rules. In spite of the 13 rules for instructors, following the way of the universe is being present and opening ourselves completely so that we respond appropriately to every moment. And that the process of learning that is done by mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. That's how we learn. Illumination in surfeit. We wake up when we've done it too many times. Right? Surfeit means too much. So, the following the way of the universe is not some magic land that happens later sometime. It's paying attention to what's happening right now and awakening to these things. Even this, particularly, I should say, this class and the process each of us has been going through just in this last hour is a constant awakening, a realization of possibly some of the mistakes that we've made in our past recently in the way that we're trying to apply this principle. And Tohei Sensei's wise sayings are just a way for us to sort of make these things bubble up and examine them with each other and within ourselves, to come to a greater maturity in our ability to follow the way of the universe. So thank you very much, everyone. Really enjoyed. Domo arigatou gozaimashita. Aloha.